I'm Joanna Simpson here at Quant Wines International in London. Joining me now is Jessica James, Managing Director and Senior Quantitative Researcher at Commerzbank. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Great to see you. And thank you. If you just start by telling me a bit about the rollercoaster ride that long bonds went on, and what have we learned from this situation?
So, the roller coaster was a bit of an analogy with physics and finance. I used to do physics and now I do finance, so it was really quite satisfying. So what happened was that in 2018 and 2019, there was a very unusual situation in the market in that rates were, even long-term rates were low or close to zero or sometimes even negative. Now, something like a pension fund or an insurance company, they need to buy investments. They couldn't buy an investment with a negative coupon. They have to have a return. Now, the converse of that was that issuers of debt, like governments, wanted to issue debt that was popular in the market. And so they wanted to issue with a coupon. But of course, rates were so low that this was incredibly difficult. But the one way you could do it was by going out along the tenor curve, and very long-dated instruments could still attract a positive coupon. So this was the driver of some incredibly long-dated bond issues. And one that I spoke of in my talk was the state of Germany, Northern Rhine-Westphalia, in 2019 issued a century bond. It will finally pay its investors back the capital in 2119. And that was what led to it. Now, the roller coaster bit is because when you have this unique situation of very low interest rates or close to zero interest rates and very long dated bonds, the way that the value of the bonds changes as underlying interest rate changes becomes highly non-intuitive. So normally you might think of a linear change. So if a bond, if the yield of the market goes up 1% and the bond goes down 10%, then if the yield goes up 2%, the bond goes down 20%, and that's linear change. Now, if it went down more for the larger change, that would be a non-linear change. So we do understand that there's non-linearity with bonds and yields, but the problem was that in this unique situation of near zero rates and yields increasing, you couldn't just rely on the first approximation to non-linearity. You had to go into several further pieces of maths to actually explain it. And the roller coaster is like this. The physics of roller coasters is you've got velocity, and that's the first derivative of distance with respect to time. You've got and then you've got acceleration. Acceleration is when you feel the force, and that's the second derivative of distance with respect to time. But you could have the rate of change of acceleration. It could be accelerating faster, and then you can have the rate of change of that. And those other two things are often called jerk and jounce. Now, in a roller coaster, you want speed and acceleration, but you don't want the jerk and jounce because they slam you back and you don't like them and you won't go on that roller coaster again. So roller coaster has a teardrop shape to its loops and not a round one. And that teardrop minimizes jerk and jounce, just like normal bonds that are not a century in tenor minimize the third and fourth derivatives. And so that was the analogy. And it actually got onto the first page, the front page of Physics World in the UK was an article about bonds. So I thought that was quite impressive. So that's where it all comes from.
And obviously we're in quite a different situation now. So are bonds fairly safe investment again?
Well, I think every investment has to be judged by the investor. But what I'll say is that unique situation is not the case anymore. Because what was if you think of it like this, if yields are 0.5% and they go up 0.5% to 1, that's doubling. So that's a huge relative change. But if yields are 5% and they go up 0.5% to 5.5%, then that's relatively a much smaller change. So what that means is those non-linearities are not going to be coming back and biting us now. So maybe we lived through a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and maybe we'll be telling this to our grandchildren, or maybe this is a situation that may recur in the future. If it does, then this is good stuff to be aware of.
And looking ahead then, how can quant investors manage risk and adapt their investment strategies?
So I would say that the lesson learned from analysing those long bond issues was that they were hedgeable, which seems impossible, doesn't it? The longest hedging instrument will be a 50-year swap. But at the time the bonds were issued, believe it or not, it seems crazy now, but 50-year euro swaps were actually trading at a negative yield, which is crazy. But because of this, their duration was actually longer than 50, and that made them a much better than expected hedge. So if you had hedged a 100-year bond with a 50-year swap, actually that hedge would have performed very well. So if we look ahead to some future imaginary scenario where perhaps rates went down to those levels again, then absolutely it would be worth investigating the swap instruments that are available.
Jessica James, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.